Welcome back, my friends. It is Saturday, June 22nd, 7:24 p.m., and we are in our second day of summer, and you are looking at some pretty big storm cells. In fact, before I even let this play through, check out what some of these states went through last night. And when I say states, I mean some of these storm cells here are bigger than some of the states in our country. And yes, I did mention that on the thumbnail. In fact, I measured one of these, one of the bigger ones, after it made it down a little bit before this. They've actually moved forward a few frames, but when I had it measured here, this thing was beginning in the north end of Georgia and reached all the way up into, I'd say, a good 50, 60 miles into Ohio. So we had some of these storms were over 300 miles in diameter, rolling through the United States yesterday. And I pulled up a few pictures from last night to keep track of what happened then compared to what's going on now. Early this morning, this is what they expected was going to happen in the near future. Severe weather in Kansas, Oklahoma, and that would move into Missouri, Iowa. We talked about Iowa last night, or 2 nights ago, rather. And then you had this kind of dip, this very big dramatic dip. And it happened. It sure did happen. And right now, this weather is being pushed basically north to south into Florida. We got Georgia involved in heavy storms right now, South Carolina, even parts of North Carolina. The country's getting hit pretty hard right now, and these storms are no joke. These are, as I said, as big as hurricanes. It doesn't mean they pack the punch a hurricane has, but when you see stuff like this on charts, certainly these are big storms. The higher the cloud reach, the darker the color. Your average would be about 12,000 feet is about your average storm cloud. But these were more like 30 and 40,000 feet storm clouds. So whatever happened on the ground underneath these things was pretty intense. And like I said, when we took this snapshot, we had this over Texas clearly. I would say a good 2/3, maybe just under 2/3 of Texas covered in a cell or two. Then we had Kansas completely covered, and then we had parts of Iowa, Missouri, Illinois got hit hard last night too. And then we had that dip, and you could see that right here as I hit play. This is 18 hours ago going into present time. Look at this hook here. And I'm going to bring sense to this by showing you the Cape chart on Vent2Sky. And what that chart describes to us is disturbances in the atmosphere. So you can clearly see that these storms are happening within that area. First, I got to show you Vent2Sky. And there it is. So, I mean, you got this Cape map here, this Cape chart, and when you see this type of color here, you know that the environment is very unstable and very prone to storms and tornadoes and things like that. If you guys remember, we used this chart to help us try to figure out some of those tornado situations we were dealing with. Look at some of the shades down here by the Bahamas. Unbelievable what could occur in the water right here right now if something were there. And we do have weather heading in that direction, so don't let that thought leave your mind. So with the Cape here, and we have an overall idea of where the severe weather is going to be. We do have another system up in the west. It's a little cooler up there, so we're not seeing the power until we basically cross the middle of the country. Basically, Texas straight up is really where things get pretty nasty. We call this area ground zero right here. So with that said, let's get back to the COD chart, and we'll look at where these formed. Again, look at these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and maybe even a 6th one in there. But look at how they form and shape into that Cape chart we just looked at on Vent2Sky. So the Cape chart is fairly accurate, and I rely on it a lot. And as of this frame, guys, you see it calmed down a little bit about 9 hours ago, 8 hours ago, with some spotty storms. And now we're entering like 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern time. So that's 5 o'clock, and then, California at 3 o'clock now. But the rush hour times we're hitting, check this out. These storms are about to blow up again. And not only that, but we need to be on tornado watches tonight, which is why I'm probably going to go live after posting this video. That was a refresh there. These are very strong storms, and they're going to continue throughout the night. And once again, there's the Cape. It's almost like a triangle up into the country right now. And then when you go back to the weather chart, you can kind of follow that same exact pattern with what's going on right now. So these are the areas to watch without a doubt. The lightning verifies that. We can look at lightning on two different charts. We have this chart here we use often, and then we have good old radar scope. $29.99. You could buy it anytime you want. One time buy, and you own it forever. Great site. And with that said, we could talk about what's going on right now. So we can see, again, if you take these severe watches and flash flood watches and the marine statements going on, luckily right now, no tornadoes as far as red box warnings go, but I feel like that's going to change unless it gets a bit darker quicker. If it gets dark before a lot of these start to peak, we might have a chance. But then again, sometimes cooler temperatures don't always subdue tornadoes. But you could check out the basically the shape. If you were to draw an average line through all of these, you would get the exact shape of the Cape chart that we looked at on Vent2Sky. So basically, I just want to make that point that when you want to look at the Cape chart, you're looking at an area of very messed up atmospheric conditions that are, that's where the storms come from. This is what we're going to get into in a few seconds. Let me finish up here. We're staying on track right now. So even without going to radar scope, we can look at the states of Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa. Iowa's certainly getting hit right now. Northwest Missouri is certainly getting hit. We have severe watches in those areas. And then this storm here is pretty interesting to me because this thing was shooting south pretty hard. And what I think this one's going to do is exactly that. This is close enough to the ocean where I feel like it's going to go into that area where the Cape showed us that deep burgundy color. These storms are attracted to these areas because they're the most favorable conditions for them to continue to live. Basically, they're just like hurricanes. Hurricanes need warm water and a push from either high pressure, jet stream, shear wind, you name it. All sorts of things like that. But these storms, now that we can look at them on this chart and on radar scope, we can get a sense of what we're dealing with here. And the tornado situation, I believe, I'm sure you guys agree, is going to be in this area right around here, because in the last hour and a half, 2 hours is when these storms started really blowing up and really putting a damper on these areas of Missouri, Iowa, and Kansas, and even Oklahoma now. We have another one blowing up in Oklahoma. So we could see them pop up during this video. I'm trying to keep this one fairly short so we're not all over the place here, but we're going to check two areas right now. One is by South Carolina and North Carolina, and that is a marine statement plus the storm cells moving through. Now you can see the lines are all shooting right out into the ocean, so as expected, that's where these will go. This is your current frame right now, so these current areas are actually getting hit as we speak. Places such as Paxville, we got Manning in there. Manning's right in the middle of it right now, actually. Probably not many people online from Manning right now, but that's going to come and go just like they always do. Some other areas for you. We had Santee that got hit pretty hard, and that kind of started moving into a southeast direction. And now we're looking at, it looks like it's wrapping around Monk's Corner, and then we move down even further, sorry about that, down even further into South Carolina. We have Goose Creek within a severe weather box, and then we have a predetermined box, which is where they think this Manning storm is going to go, which is going to be King Street, Andrews, and as of now, Georgetown later on. So you can click this line here and get a decent idea about what time that's going to happen within a few minutes. Another great thing about this chart here, radar scope. Now, with that said, we could check these all out. We don't have to necessarily. In the live stream, I will definitely do that if anyone has particular questions, but we'll check out what's going on in Kansas, and we're also going to check out Missouri because we have a flash flood warning in Missouri, and that's due to the severe storms that are about to move in there. So let's check out North Carolina, Florida, Kansas. We'll try this one right here, and that should bring us to where we want to be. Yeah, so we got to let this load real quick. Still don't have that government technology quite yet, so we still have to wait for stuff to buffer sometimes, but it's worth it. So we could see here, the storms are not in the boxes yet. These boxes are put here for when they expect those storms to arrive. And once we get to the last frame, Boom, we'll pause it right there. And this is current time right now, guys. These are the areas getting hit. So we have Cheney, Garden Plains, we have Goddard, the more severe areas just north of Viola. So you live in any of those areas by those counties near Wichita, definitely worth paying attention to what's going on around you, because these could easily become tornado warnings. And just like that, it could be a tornado. So you don't really get much warning with tornadoes, guys. That's why we've been on this site many times and seen these red boxes pop up. And before you know it, it's a touchdown tornado on the ground. One example would have been Jefferson City. But luckily we spoke about that before it actually happened. Here's another cell definitely worth paying attention to. Not seeing many names around the area. It's broken into counties. We got New Cambria that it's already passed. It's south. The storm itself is south of Solomon, but it will eventually move into, what is that, Albany and then Enterprise. So we want to check out the time on that. 7:38, and then by 7:53 it could be heading to Enterprise, as long as it keeps on this path, which it looks like it's going to. That seems to be the common theme here with these storms. They're all moving in this sort of direction, and then if we still have the same conditions going on with the Cape in the next couple hours, they're going to take a hard turn, and a hard turn south, and it's pretty much going to repeat itself as what you're seeing right here on Radar Scope now. So another chart we can look at real quick and get an idea of where these storms are moving based on just momentum. You can kind of see how everything's kind of like doing this little peak circle. Like things, you know, the storms are puffing up around here, like I said, Iowa, and then they're like kind of moving southward. It's almost like, you know, we're not going clockwise really, but it's more of like an up and then a down sort of force. But look at this one. This thing shot across the country so quick. I mean, these things remind me of comets. It looks like there's comets shooting across the United States, and these are hundreds of miles long, guys. This is not stuff you see every day. We're now into late June, which is apparently when tornado season is supposed to start calming down, but all I'm seeing is more and more severe storms, and next is hurricanes, guys. I'm talking maybe a few days, a week or two before we start seeing on a regular basis these tropical depressions forming in these warm waters of the South Caribbean and the Gulf, and all the way from the west coast of Africa off screen here, following that path all the way through the Leeward Islands. We can even see some of these storms on this chart here. They're just not quite clinging yet. We got some shear going on. You can see the shear wind is pulling these storms apart. That is the only thing that really saves us from hurricanes, besides a deterred direction with a jet stream or a high pressure system. Besides that, all we have to rely on is the shear wind. So as we move into that really quick, we'll check out the areas they say to watch tonight. And again, here is that pyramid looking shape that we showed on Ventu Sky, right where the Cape shows. And as far as the tornadoes go, I've said in the past, when you see a 10%, that's when you really, really want to pay attention. But because of how quickly these storms blew up and because of how high these clouds reached last night, I really need to put this out there and say Oklahoma and parts of North Texas, and then in turn Kansas, and throughout the night possibly, it all depends on these conditions, need to be on alert for tornadoes. I mean, it's right there, 5%, half a 10, you know, and half the warning. But with this season and what we've gone through already, it's not something to take lightly. Wind is going to be a huge factor. We could see some very strong straight line winds. We talked about that recently too, on how to tell whether a straight line wind came through or a tornado came through. They usually use that method when it's dark out. If things are falling in the same direction, more than likely it was a straight line wind. If things are scattered about and damaged, that was more than likely a tornado touchdown. And you can also see by South Carolina, they have that 30% wind going on, and that's current. That's going on right now. So the Carolinas and the East Coast, from Florida all the way up to almost Virginia, is getting their share as well today. All right, now our county-by-county chart is pretty much representing everything we just said. Again, this is a very simple chart. All you do is you look at the color, you match it down here, and that is pretty much what's going on in your area. Now, if you notice, underneath these storms, there's a lot of heat going on. We were talking about Texas and the heat going on there, and then the fires already starting in the southwest, the Arizona fire. we're going to be seeing a lot of that, guys. It's just it got hot quick, and with all this wind going on, you're going to see a lot of fire warnings, especially on this chart. So we got severe thunderstorms here, flash flood warnings in front of them, and then death heat right in front of it. Now we're looking at the pink part of it. I'm not sure if that's a gale warning or if that's for small craft advisory. Either way, this is a wind warning. These are wind warnings, and that is just like I showed you on this chart here. When you click on the wind, boom, that's exactly what we're seeing on our county by county chart. Just another area represented in there with Mississippi and Georgia, and then South Carolina, parts of North Carolina with marine statements within those. That's a lot to say in one sentence. All right, so tropical tidbits will show us the same exact thing. I could run through it quick if you want, but it's going to take us fairly quickly through the day. If we're going to stick to just today, basically you're looking at it from here to here is going to be today. So the most severe area as of right now that they're predicting is going to be parts of Iowa and Missouri. And we had this weird anomaly looking counterclockwise spinning storm, this low pressure system shoot up into Canada from the United States. I could backtrack a little bit, but I'll save that for the live stream. And as far as the hurricane talk goes, this thing down here is still sitting here. We talked about this in our last live stream. It's almost like a stationary atmospheric, storm that's just sitting there. And then as each one passes it, it like takes a break. It's almost like these things are rolling off the west coast of Africa. They're all following the high pressure bubble. We've explained this in the past too. The high pressure bubble is what determines where these storms go, where these hurricanes go, and where they go after they leave the United States as they head towards places like Ireland and up towards Nova Scotia. Lots of low pressure systems up there. And that was earthquake warning on my phone. 5.0 New Zealand, 5.6 Mexico, 4.8 Mexico. We actually had two big earthquakes take place 2 minutes apart on directly opposite sides of the ocean. So, to continue here, though, and keep this video within a video watching range, you could see that things are starting to heat up in the South Caribbean. We're getting storms down there that are spending a little more time than their trips there. And we finally get a look at that invest that is coming off right there. You could see it. This is an invest that they are calling 10% over the next 2 days, but 60% over the next 5 days. Okay, so they don't believe it's going to form in 2 days, but they do believe within the next 6 days, there's a 5 days, there's a 60% chance of this becoming a tropical cyclone, which could be possibly our first one of the season. That includes Pacific and Atlantic Ocean as far as a tropical cyclone or a hurricane. So, like I said, guys, we're getting there. As of right now, nothing showing, which is still surprising me, in the Atlantic Ocean as far as invests, especially after seeing what's going on in the South Caribbean and all this moisture flow making its way from the African coast all the way to the South Caribbean with the sand there too. We have a lot of sand coming off the Sahara Desert now too. Sometimes that can aid in these hurricanes, and sometimes they can break them. It all depends on, I guess, particle size, the amount, all sorts of things play into that factor. But to close this off really quick, I want to show you this fairly interesting here. Look at this 5.6 and look at the time, 22:31. And then at 22:35, we had a 4.9 directly across in our action spot here above New Zealand, which has been getting pounded lately, especially north of New Zealand by Fiji, New Caledonia. This entire area has been taking a big hit lately, and it's got a lot of people concerned about the tsunami possibilities, the weakening of the ground, so this would be a continuing situation. And then we had the this puppy here, 5.6. In Mexico, which is definitely a decent size when we're getting this far above Central America. So we have a lot to look at, guys. And then we had that breakout today I posted on. Technically, these are considered Oregon quakes because, boom, you straight shot right to Oregon right there. And they are on the shelf here, the Stone Step fault line here, and then we have the Cascadia subduction zone. So these are all within a grouping here, and they all happen within a short period of time. I believe two of them were 5.2s. We could go in the action, yeah, 5.2, I believe. Let's just check one out. 5.4, I'm sorry. So there was two 5.4s, and then we were talking about this, and it's remarkable how one day you're talking about how there has not been anything above a 4.5 near Alaska and the U.S., and then 24 hours later, there's like seven within an hour. It's just incredible. The weather, the geography of the Earth that's going on right now, the shifts and changes are just unbelievable, and we're living in extreme and unbelievable times. So, with that said, guys, I'm going to end this video. I hope I got enough information out to those who needed it. And like I said, we'll be going live shortly. So, take care, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you very much.